There is a jar sitting on a wooden shelf in a farmhouse outside of Strasburg, Pennsylvania, that has never had a label on it. No ingredients list, no SPF claim, no dermatologist tested seal, just rendered fat, slightly yellow, smelling faintly of the farm. The woman who keeps it there is 73 years old and has been applying it to her face every night since she was a teenager. Her mother did the same, her grandmother did the same, and her skin, if you have ever stood close enough to a woman who has lived like that, does not look the way you would expect. That jar costs less than $1 to fill. And there are people in very expensive offices who would prefer you never found out why it works. What I am going to tell you today is not a trend. It is not a beauty hack. It is a 200-year practice that thrived inside one of the most isolated agricultural communities in North America, survived completely untouched by the modern skincare industry, and is now being quietly reverse engineered by cosmetic chemists who are hoping you do not notice where the idea came from. Before we go further, if you are the kind of woman who has spent real money on creams that promised real results and got very little back, stay with me. This one matters. The methods I am sharing in this video are inspired by traditional practices of old order Amish communities in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio. These are communities that have deliberately stayed outside the consumer economy for generations. That is not a small thing. That is the entire reason any of this is worth talking about. Now, let us start with what this substance actually is. Tallow, rendered animal fat, most commonly from beef. When it is purified and clarified, it becomes a pale, semi-solid fat that has been used on human skin since long before the word moisturizer existed. Roman soldiers used it. Medieval apothecaries kept it on their shelves. In the early American frontier, before the drugstore was an option, before petroleum jelly had been invented, before Pond's cold cream appeared on the market in 1907, tallow was what women used. It was practical, it was available, and it worked. The Amish communities of Lancaster and Holmes counties never stopped using it. That is the critical difference. When the rest of America moved on, they did not. And the reasons they did not move on have nothing to do with stubbornness and everything to do with a way of life that simply does not require you to buy what someone else is selling. So why does tallow work on skin specifically, and specifically on mature skin? The short answer is this. Your skin is made of fat. Not entirely, but in ways that matter deeply. The outer layer of your skin, the stratum corneum, maintains its integrity through lipids, which are fatty molecules that hold cells together and keep moisture from escaping. As you age, your body produces fewer of these lipids. The skin gets drier, thinner, more permeable. Fine lines deepen. That tight, papery feeling after washing your face is not just dryness. It is your skin's barrier telling you it is losing the building materials it needs. Beef tallow, when rendered from grass-fed cattle, contains a fatty acid profile that is remarkably close to the lipids found in human seed. Palmitic acid, stearic acid, oleic acid. These are not exotic compounds. They are the same types of molecules your skin already knows how to use. When you apply tallow, you are not introducing something foreign. You are replenishing something depleted. It also contains fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin A, which your skin uses for cell turnover. Vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. These are not present in petroleum-based moisturizers. They are not present in most synthetic creams. They are present in tallow because tallow is a whole food, essentially. And whole foods retain complexity that isolated compounds do not. Now here is where the history gets interesting, and where it starts to explain why you have never heard this discussed openly on a mainstream beauty channel. In 1872, Vaseline, which is a petroleum byproduct, was trademarked and began its commercial life in the United States. The man behind it, Robert Chesebro, traveled through Pennsylvania oil fields and noticed that workers were using the residue from oil rigs to treat cuts and burns. He refined it, patented it, and marketed it aggressively. By the 1880s, it was in medicine cabinets across the country. This was not a conspiracy. It was commerce. but it was the beginning of a long substitution. Petroleum for fat, synthetic for natural, manufactured for rendered. By the early 20th century, the cosmetic industry as we know it was taking shape. In 1938, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was signed into law, and for the first time, the FDA had regulatory authority over cosmetic products. That sounds like protection. In some ways it was. But it also created a framework where commercial products needed to be manufactured, labeled, and sold through regulated channels. Traditional preparations that had never been manufactured, never been labeled, and were passed from mother to daughter did not fit into that framework. They did not disappear from the farmhouse, but they disappeared from the marketplace. By the 1950s, petrochemical derived ingredients had become the dominant base of commercial moisturizers. Mineral oil, propylene, glycol, dimethicone. These ingredients were cheap to source, stable on a shelf, and easy to manufacture at scale. They also created a particular kind of skin feel that consumers came to associate with moisturization. That slick, immediately soft sensation that you notice the moment you apply the product. What they did not always deliver was long-term barrier repair. The softness was real. The results were sometimes temporary. The industry spent the next 70 years refining this model. Not changing it, refining it. And here is the number that puts the whole thing in perspective. The global skincare market was valued at approximately $146 billion in 2020. The companies within that market spend more on lobbying and regulatory influence than most people would feel comfortable knowing. The PCPC, the Personal Care Products Council, which is the primary trade association for the cosmetic industry in Washington, has operated as a lobbying body for decades, working to shape how ingredients are classified and how safety claims are reviewed. When an ingredient cannot be patented, it cannot become a product that generates that kind of revenue. Tallow cannot be patented. You cannot own a cow's fat. So nobody has ever had a financial reason to fund the clinical research that would let a major brand put a tallow cream on a shelf and charge you $60 for it. That does not mean the research does not support it. It means the research does not exist in the form the industry needs because the industry never commissioned it. There is a woman outside of Millersburg, Ohio, 68 years old, widowed, mother of 6, who has been making her own tallow preparation since 1987. She told me when I asked her what she uses it for, that she uses it for everything. Her hands after a day working outside, her face every night before bed, the skin on her elbows in winter. She spends roughly $4 a month. Her daughters use it. Her oldest granddaughter, 19, has started using it. None of them have ever purchased a commercial moisturizer. When I asked her if she had ever tried one, she said yes, once, a gift from a neighbor, and she returned to the tallow within a week because she said the other one felt like wearing a mask. That phrase stayed with me, wearing a mask. It captures exactly what occlusive synthetic moisturizers do. They sit on top of the skin, they create the sensation of softness, but they do not feed anything. Now, I want to be honest with you about something because it matters. Tallow is not a corrective for advanced photo damage. If you have deep sun damage that has been accumulating for decades, no topical product, tallow included, is going to reverse that. What tallow can do is strengthen the skin's lipid barrier, improve moisture retention over time, and deliver fat-soluble nutrients that support cell function. But that process takes weeks. Most people who try it honestly for the first time report that the first improvement they notice is in texture, not in lines, and that it takes 6 to 8 weeks of consistent use before those changes feel significant. If you try it once and expect what a department store cream has trained you to expect, you will probably put it down. That is the honest version. The reason I tell you this is because the dramatic claims are what get people to try something once and then dismiss it. And this is too important to be dismissed because someone oversold it. Now, what should you actually look for if you want to try this? The quality of the tallow matters. Tallow rendered from grass-fed pasture-raised cattle has a significantly different nutrient profile than tallow rendered from conventionally raised animals. Grass-fed fat is higher in conjugated linoleic acid and in fat-soluble vitamins. This is not marketing language. It reflects a real difference in what the animal ate and how its fat was composed. If you can find a local farm that renders tallow, that is the best option. If not, there are small producers who sell it specifically for skin use, and they will tell you what the source is. It should be rendered slowly at low heat, clarified to remove impurities, and stored in a clean glass container away from heat and light. Some women in Lancaster communities add a small amount of lavender, which has its own documented antimicrobial and calming properties. Some add nothing. The base preparation itself is the thing. One practical note for women with oily or acne-prone skin: tallow is a rich, occlusive fat, and if your skin still leans oily, especially around the nose and forehead, you may find it is too heavy for daytime use. Apply a very small amount at night on clean, slightly damp skin, and give it 30 minutes before your head touches the pillow. Adjust from there. For women in their 50s and 60s with dry, thinning, or sensitized skin, which describes most of you watching this, the barrier replenishing effect is often exactly what the skin has been missing. Here is what I want you to think about. The women of old order Amish communities in Pennsylvania and Ohio have lived without the skincare industry for 2 centuries. They did not have Sephora. They did not have dermatologist branded serums. They did not have a podcast telling them to double cleanse. What they had was animals, land, and knowledge that moved from one generation to the next without ever being sold. And when you stand in front of one of those women and look at her skin, you do not see what the industry has trained you to expect from someone who has lived without its products. You see something else. Something quieter. Something that took time. That is not an accident. And it is not a coincidence that the ingredient at the center of that practice is something nobody can make money selling to you at scale. The modern skincare industry does not need you to believe that cheap traditional preparations work. It needs you to believe that the next formula, the next peptide, the next retinol concentration is the thing you have been missing. It needs you in the cycle. A woman who renders her own tallow and uses it for $4 a month is not in the cycle. And a woman who tells her daughters to do the same is removing 3 future customers from the cycle permanently. That is the business problem tallow represents. Not danger, not inefficacy. An exit from a system that was never designed to give you a permanent solution. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you spend on skincare products every month. Not what you think you spend, what you actually spend when you count everything. I want to see that number. And if your grandmother used something her mother taught her, something from before the drugstore era, before the beauty counter, before the television advertisement told her what she was missing, I want to hear about it. Those practices are being lost faster than most of us realize, and the comment section of a video like this is sometimes the only place they surface. If you are the kind of woman who believes real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Next time, the Amish hair rinse the FDA attempted to classify as a drug-grade preparation in 1978, which would have made it illegal to prepare at home. The reason they failed is not what you would expect, and it changed how we define the line between a cosmetic and a medicine in ways that still affect what you can and cannot buy today.